Great. So I'd like to welcome everyone to the webinar today. My name is Tom Lindsay. I'm the Senior Legal Counsel for the Center for Democratic and Environmental Rights, also known as CDER, which hosts these monthly webinars on rights of nature developments around the world. So video recordings of past webinars that we've done, including those focusing on rights of nature in Ecuador, Australia, India, and the Philippines, are available on our website at centerforenvironmentalrights.org. In addition, last month, we co-hosted the Global Forum on the Rights of Nature and the Human Right to a Healthy Environment. Our partner groups for that forum were Dignity Rights International and the Global Environmental Rights Institute at Widener University, Delaware Law School. The Global Forum featured leading activists and advocates from around the world working on advancing rights of nature laws. And you can find all of the panel sessions on our website as well. More information on those and other events and updates available through CDER's newsletter and social media. And we'll include these in the chat box for everybody now, just so they have those for reference. Today is our pleasure to bring you the opportunity to hear from two and perhaps three, we're still waiting for the third who may join us later in the webinar, key people in the growing rights of nature movement in Florida, where on Election Day, November 3rd, the people of Orange County, Florida, voted overwhelmingly to recognize the legal rights of the Wekiva and Econlockhatchee rivers and other waterways within the county. Orange County, with a population of over 1.4 million people, is the largest place in the United States to adopt a rights of nature law. On Election Day, 529,765 voters cast a vote in favor of that law, which is more votes than all of the various rights of nature measures in the US have received to date combined. Before we introduce our speakers today, I just wanted to make some housekeeping notes. During the presentation, everyone is welcome to submit questions, in fact, encouraged to submit questions in the chat box in Zoom. We'll collect those and ask them to the relevant person during the question and answer part of the webinar today. We'll keep everyone's microphone muted today, just to keep the speaker's path clear. And just to note, this webinar is being recorded and will be available online after we're done today on the CDER website and also on YouTube. So on to the speakers. Let's rock and roll. Today we're going to hear from Chuck O'Neill, Joseph Benezia, and perhaps incoming Orange County, Florida County Commissioner Nicole Wilson, who may join us later in the webinar. I'm going to introduce Chuck now and then turn it over to him. Chuck O'Neill is the chairman of the Florida Rights of Nature Network, also affectionately known as FRON, a state network established to advance rights of nature laws across the state. He ran for the Florida Senate in 2016 and has previously served as chairman of the Natural Resources Committee and as first vice president of the League of Women Voters of Florida. He was the author of the Florida Black Bear Habitat Restoration Act, brought the lawsuit to stop the hunting of Florida black bear, and created Speak Up Wekiva, a Wekiva River protection group which filed suit several months ago against the state of Florida over the state's attempt to preempt rights of nature laws from being passed at the local level in Florida. With that, I'll turn it over to Chuck, who will share with us the why, what, who, and how of the Right to Clean Water Rights of Nature initiative that passed in Orange County. I give you Chuck O'Neill.
Thank you, Thomas. It's a pleasure to be here today and speak with all of you. Again, my name's Chuck O'Neill, and I'm chairman of the Florida Rights of Nature Network. Today, we're going to talk about our efforts to bring sanity to the way that our legal system in Florida views nature, specifically our springs, rivers, estuaries, and bays. Let's start with Election Day, November 3rd, 2020. We won. We won big. Our Rights of Nature Charter Amendment, entitled The Right to Clean Water, passed with 529,000, and Thomas, we're going to have to give the exact number here, 529,878 votes. You got to count those military ballots.
I hear the need for a recount.
Well, I don't think we're going to lose it. We had 89% of the vote. So as Thomas said, we became the largest municipality in the United States to pass a rights of nature law. So we did that with the support of not only Democrats, but also Republicans and NPAs. It was a nonpartisan win, a bipartisan win, and across the board, a statement to our legislators in the state that rights of nature is here to stay. But what does it mean when we say a rights of nature law? For that, we need to rewind back to, in this case, April of 2013, when Sister Pat Seaman at the Berry University Law School and the Center for Earth Jurisprudence put on a 2-day seminar with Thomas speaking at that seminar. I, along with 24 other people, attended the seminar, and we learned much about the way our legal system views nature. The central question was, why wasn't our system of environmental protection working? And as we found out during the seminar, it is working. It's working exactly the way it was designed. Our legal system is set up to consume nature at a rate that is predetermined. So there is a predetermined amount of nature that will be destroyed and consumed. It's not there necessarily to protect nature. It's there to slow down the destruction. So when we get to a situation like Florida, and we look and we say, well, why isn't the Environmental Protection Department of Environmental Protection, protecting our environment? Well, they're not designed to protect the environment. They're to permit the destruction at a rate that they deem acceptable. Unfortunately, we live in a society in which corporations have the rights of humans, but nature has no rights. Corporations have a First Amendment right, they have a Fifth Amendment right. And we're not just talking about longstanding corporations. All of us on the phone right now could dial into sunbiz.org and create a corporation. And the minute that corporation goes into existence, it has these rights. And yet we have rivers such as the Wekiva and Econlockhatchee that have existed for tens of thousands of years. And yet under our system of law, they have no rights. So how do we rectify that matter? How do we change that so that there is a balance between nature and commerce? We hear that term often as environmentalists. Oh, you have to seek a balance. Well, that's exactly what we're doing here. We're seeking a balance. So in order to give a natural water body rights, we found that the best way to do that was to try to insert it in the charter of the 20 charter counties in Florida. There are 67 counties in all in Florida, and 20 of which are charter counties. A charter is kind of like a constitution for the county. And there are 3 ways that charter can be amended in the state of Florida. Each of those 3 ways requires that the voters of the county vote in a general election to accept or not accept that charter amendment. In Orange County, we were lucky enough to have a charter review commission convene in 2019. Other counties such as Alachua tried the petition route to get many petitions signed to put it on the ballot. They needed 18,000 petitions. and they have to do it within 6 months. Here in Orange County, it would have required us to get 100,000 petitions signed. And this is not a change.org type petition. This is a physical 8.5 by 11 piece of paper with information, name, address, voter ID number on that petition. So it's a very cumbersome matter. So we have the charter amendment, charter review process methodology that we tried in Orange. We have the petition process that was tried in Alachua. And in Lee County, they spoke with several county commissioners, city councilmen to try to put it on the ballot there. So, we tried 3 different methods. The charter review method, fortunately, in Orange County worked. We proposed in June of 2019 a charter amendment that would give the rights of nature to the Wekiva River and to the Econ-Lakahatchee River. So when we talk about the rights of nature, what specifically did we mean? Well, during the course of the Charter Review Commission process, they appointed a subcommittee of 3 attorneys, a UCF biology professor, and a retired NASA engineer to develop the language. So that language was developed by them in consultation with the counsel, the attorney for the Charter Review Commission, over the course of 7 months. So that particular committee met 11 times over the 7-month period and went through 10 different drafts of what this particular charter amendment would look like. And what they developed was very wise. They developed a charter amendment that would give 4 rights to the Wekiva and Econ-Lakahatchee River. The first right was the right to exist. Then we also have the right to flow as defined in Florida statute, the right to be protected against pollution, and the right to maintain a healthy ecosystem. So the first part of this charter amendment created those 4 rights. The second part was more of a homeocentric clause or part of the charter amendment that said that the citizens of Orange County have the right to clean water by having their waters protected against pollution. So there was a 2-part. This was kind of a hybrid that was developed by the Charter Review Commission and specifically by the committee. And that committee, through its 10 drafts, came up with a proposal that it took back to the larger Charter Review Commission, the 15-member Charter Review Commission that was voted on, and it had to clear 2 separate hurdles, 2 separate votes. But in March of 2020, again, we started this back in June of 2019. In March of 2020, the Charter Review Commission had their second and final vote and agreed to put it on the ballot. Now here in Orange County, and it varies from county to county, but here in Orange County, once the Charter Review Commission passes it, it goes straight to the supervisor of elections. There is no intermediate step where the Orange County Commission has to approve that proposal to be put on the ballot. So we were lucky enough to have a straight shot from the Charter Review Commission to the supervisor of elections office. Now, in the meantime, there was a law passed that tried to preempt the rights of nature. So the legislature tried to basically head us off at the pass in hopes to keep this off the ballot in Orange County. Fortunately, we have a very good and honorable supervisor of election, and his position was, I'm going to do what the charter of Orange County says. I'm going to put it on the ballot, and I'm not going to take it off unless I have a court order to remove it from the ballot. There was talk about suing to get it removed from the ballot. If you're from this area, you know that another county has sued, they're in the process of suing to try and get the split O charter amendment removed from the ballot. If you're from South Florida, you're probably familiar with Key West charter amendments that were tried to be tossed from the ballot, and they fortunately were not. And the citizens of Monroe County, in that case, passed those charter amendments. So where does it go from here? We in June, the qualifying, the election process began. We went through a primary, and we had an interesting thing happen in the primary. One of the attorneys that was working with us on developing this rights of nature effort, Nicole Wilson, was also running for the Orange County Commission. We created a sign in which half of the sign promoted our Right to Clean Water initiative, and the other half of the sign promoted Nicole Wilson. Well, that prompted a big dust up with her opponent, and they made a big deal out of it that Nicole was for this crazy thing called clean water. And it proved to be one of the best things that could have possibly happened, because Nicole ended up beating a well-entrenched, developer-backed sitting incumbent by the total of 57 to 42. So running on the basis of this rights of nature / right to clean water charter amendment proved to be very advantageous in Orange County. Early on, we had the choice of what to call this amendment. And we felt as though the concept of the rights of nature is not one that can be explained to the average person in a short deal of time. We have 800,000 voters in Orange County, and we could not get them all to go to one of Thomas's 2-day seminars. So we focused on the second part called the initiative, the Right to Clean Water Initiative, and made up signs accordingly. What we did, we had a small budget to promote the amendment. We had about $25,000 to spend. And what we did with that largely was to create Facebook posts on a page called the Right to Clean Water. And then we would boost that post out to people in the geographic area of Orange County. We had 100 Facebook posts that we boosted out throughout the area to acquaint people with it, with what we were doing and what it was all about. The other thing that we did is we early on decided this was going to be a very negative election because of the presidential race. So we tried to keep things positive. And to that end, one of the things that we learned is while watching some of the commercials that we made, it shows you how many people are watching. And we found that during one of our early commercials where we show a dead manatee lying belly up in the water, people were turning it off. And so from that point on, we kept dead animals out of our commercials. That was not part of the messaging. The messaging was about clean water, healthy living, healthy wildlife, and pictures of lots of healthy wildlife, and a lot of very, very great ads that were put together by our team of Jess Kovach and Lee Perry and Stacy Bursack. So we are very grateful that we had so many talented volunteers working on this. The only we only had 2 paid people, our consultant, who worked at a very reasonable rate of $500 a month. And we paid a guy to put out signs. So we put out 1,750 signs throughout Orange County advertising the right to clean water. It was a very important step because a lot of people became familiar with it. So I said the early effort to get to define the issue in the minds of the Orange County voters proved very effective. The right to clean water, we geared that messaging towards establishing what I believe and what will come to pass someday, that the right to clean water is a new civil right, that we all have the right to clean water, that a polluter does not have the right to pollute our waters. So that message we got through to people, and it resounded with a very diverse population. Orange County has a very diverse population, and the right to clean water message resounded very well. We had people waving signs, we had caravans. We were lucky enough to get the endorsements of the League of Women Voters of Orange County, the Orlando Sentinel, and the Orlando Post. So for those of you who are watching and thinking, how can I get something like this going in my county or my city? You don't necessarily have to be a charter county. We have designed an ordinance that is called the Right to Clean Water Ordinance, and it can be passed regardless of whether you're a large charter county or a small city. And with the Florida Rights of Nature Network, we are working very hard to help people around the state pass this new ordinance, this Right to Clean Water Ordinance that does reference that the waters of the state of Florida in at least one county have these 4 rights, and that they should be recognized around the state. So with that, I will hand it back to Thomas, and he's going to introduce Joe.
Great. Thanks, Chuck. And we look forward to digging in deeper through the question and answer session about what happened in Orange as well at a campaign level. So next up today is Joseph Benezia. He's one of the directors of the Florida Rights of Nature Network. He also serves as the education director for the Lee County, Florida Rights of Nature Group. He's a founding board member of the Southwest Florida Reset Center, a hub that seeks to reset human impacts on global warming and regional ecosystems. In his spare time, he serves as the education director for his local citizens' climate lobby and as legislative liaison to his member of Congress. Joe is going to talk with us today about rights of nature efforts in his home county, which is Lee County, Florida, which is the Fort Myers area on the west coast of Florida, and about the Florida Rights of Nature Network's efforts to spread rights of nature lawmaking across the state of Florida. So Joe, take it away.
Thank you, Thomas. Good morning or good afternoon, everybody, depending on where you are. For the last several months, all attention, all eyes have been on Orange County, and rightfully so, but there have been other efforts going on, and we need to have other efforts going on elsewhere in the state. And so, yes, I'm going to fill everybody in on what has been happening in Southwest Florida before and now after the vote in Orange County. So Lee County Rights of Nature, otherwise known as LERON, was formed in mid-2019 after Thomas came down and gave us one of his weekend workshops on rights of nature. LERON's original intention was to amend the Lee County Charter with the Caloosahatchee River Bill of Rights. The Caloosahatchee River is one of our main waterways down here. It's named after the Calusa Indians who were here long before us. And given what rights of nature owes to the wisdom of indigenous cultures, I think that is absolutely and wonderfully appropriate. Maybe some people on this call today remember seeing photos of the Caloosahatchee River 2 years ago, or some of our beaches down here in Southwest Florida, when we suffered historic blue-green algae blooms, and especially virulent and long-lasting red tides. We had hundreds of thousands of tons of dead sea life lining our beaches and clogging our canals. Pets died, people got sick. If you have not seen the short documentary called Toxic Puzzle, which was very popular down here back then, which documents a lot of the growing research connecting exposure to cyanobacteria, another word for blue-green algae, and neurological diseases such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. I strongly recommend that you watch that film. Furthermore, our local tourist economy took a wicked hit. Nobody comes down to look at dead dolphins, green mucky waters, or to fish in dead zones. Our governor had to declare a state of emergency. And this was 2 years after 2016, when we went through the same thing, and previous years to that. Blue-green algae blooms, as said by National Geographic, are pretty much becoming the new normal down here in South Florida. And what was happening here on the West Coast was happening on the East Coast. So Orange County is up here. Lake Okeechobee is down here, and the Caloosahatchee River is down here. And the problem for the Caloosahatchee River is that the often polluted Lake Okeechobee often releases its waters into the river, which causes our blue-green algae blooms and exacerbates our red tides. Why is Lake Okeechobee so polluted? Well, that has to do with nutrient runoff from places like Chuck's Orange County, from farms, and from development. And nutrient sounds like a nice term, but it's not. What we're talking about is phosphorus-laden fertilizer. There are 50,000 tons of residual phosphorus sitting in the bottom of Lake Okeechobee. The state and the federal government are spending billions of dollars trying to clean up the pollution mechanically after the fact, such as deep injection wells, where they take millions of gallons of this polluted water, they inject it deep into the earth, a little bit too close to our aquifers for many people's comfort. But what we're not seeing are legislative efforts to tackle the problem at the source of curtailing this egregious use of fertilizers. Now, Lee County, we're not totally innocent. We've got some issues here with leaky septic tanks causing fecal bacteria contamination. But our biggest problem is coming from north of us. And so Leron was pushing for a Caloosahatchee River Bill of Rights that would give citizens and municipalities within the county and the county itself the standing to take polluters north of us, if necessary, to court in violation of our rights and the rights of the river. There was no way our Board of Commissioners was going to hear about a Rights of Nature initiative. We did not have a Charter Review Commission available at the time, and even if we did, they would not run with it either. So we were left with the one course of action that Chuck mentioned earlier, a petition drive. Due to the population of Lee County, that would have meant getting 44,000 signed petitions within 6 months from the time that the supervisor election signed off on the initiative. That's 250 petitions a day. That meant that we needed either an army of volunteer petition gatherers, which logistically and organizationally is pretty challenging, or we had to go out and pay for professional petition gatherers. Now we're talking easily I think that the lowest price we got for that was $120,000. So looking at what was needed in terms of manpower or money, we realized that this was just too great a lift for us. And unfortunately, we had to step back and abandon our efforts. All right, so our new thinking was that we were going to approach a much smaller municipality where perhaps we would find a favorable town or city council who might run with a rights of nature initiative on the ballot, or a municipality where we would only need 500 or maybe 1,000 petitions signed. And the same logic would apply. That municipality, the citizens in that municipality would have the same standing, the same legal ability to take polluters north of them to court for being in violation of their rights and the rights of the waterways. But upon reconsideration, we realized that this approach had some weaknesses. First, it really isn't likely that small municipalities are going to want to stick out their political necks and run with this and incur some litigation costs that might be a little bit more than they can handle given their budgets. But on top of that, we realized that this approach just wasn't big enough, wasn't bold enough to accomplish our most fundamental and immediate purposes. And those purposes are right now to take the voices of the citizens in Orange County and amplify them many times over, building a critical mass of support from lots of municipalities, lots of people that eventually would force the hand of those in state government and also influence the thinking of judges. Sooner or later, they're going to be court cases. And when a judge has to consider rights of nature, if he sees, oh, it's just those kooky people in Orange County who want to run with this. Well, but it's not. We have a whole bunch of kooky people all over in Southwest Florida. They want to run with this too. That certainly is going to have an impact on that judge's thinking. So our approach now is to run a sort of multi-municipality approach down here in Southwest Florida. And with the passage now of Orange County and that 89% number, we believe this is very doable. We believe we can get petition drives going in those smaller municipalities. We already know that there are town councils who are much more receptive to the idea than they had been. For them, the thinking is sort of safety in numbers. They may be hesitant by themselves to stick their political necks out, but if there are others doing it, they're going to be much more inclined to run with it as well. But for us, once again, it serves our main purpose of amplifying the voices of those folks up in Orange County and building towards that point of critical mass. And so what we have begun to do, already is doing it, is to start making connections with people in other communities who are reaching out to us. All of a sudden, everybody's interested in talking about rights of nature and being on webinars and Zoom calls and such. And our job now is to educate these folks and to guide them to running with rights of nature, rights of clean water initiatives in their communities, because that's the way they have to be. They have to be the driving force in their communities. And this is already happening. In the minute that I have left, I just want to add that what the language, the ordinance, the amendments that we are now pushing down here are a little bit different than the one up in Orange County. We do not want folks down here to be thinking that, why are we going to run with this? You still have that state preemption on the books. We have a newly crafted language for our ordinances that do not run amok of the state preemption. We can still advance the right to clean water. We could still advance what we need to about rights of nature. And that's what we are working on. And the last thing I'll say is that because of Orange County, because of all the news coverage, I mean, rights of nature is suddenly in the air. down here in Lee County, we only started summer of 2019. This past August, the congressional candidates running for our House of Representatives were asked if they thought that rights of nature, if they thought nature should have rights. Within 1 year, 2 years ago, there's no way that question ever would have been asked of any candidate in Lee County. So for the time being, I'll just end with that. Thank you for everybody's time.
Great. Thank you, Joe. So we had Commissioner Nicole Wilson for a minute, and then she's disappeared again. But I want to go ahead and introduce her anyway, in case she's able to rejoin us for the Q&A section. So Nicole is the newest county commissioner in Orange County. And she's an environmental lawyer, a community activist who has volunteered with the League of Women Voters, Lawyers for Election Protection, and the American Constitution Society. And of course, this past year, as Chuck mentioned, she ran for county commissioner on a broad platform, including opposition to putting a toll road through the Split Oak Natural Protection Area, which has been a big controversial issue in Orange County, and her endorsement of the Right to Clean Water Rights of Nature Charter Amendment that, of course, won overwhelmingly with 89% of the vote in Orange County. And just to reiterate also what Chuck said earlier, that she handily beat the pants off, some people would say, but handily beat the incumbent commissioner, garnering almost 57% of the vote in her election. So Chuck, do you want to say a couple words about how the campaign kind of her campaign interacted with the Right to Clean Water campaign, what that means for other candidates, because I know other candidates were running on issues similar to the initiative and on the initiative itself. Do you want to say a couple words about that?
Sure. A lot of the controversy in her race began with that one sign, that one $100 4x8 sign, in which we advertised the Right to Clean Water Charter Amendment on one side and Nicole on the other side. That prompted an ally of her opponent to insert his stepdaughter into the race as a write-in candidate. In Florida, when you have 3 candidates for a county commission, or at least in Orange County, it pushed the race to the primary. So people only had from June to August 18th to get to know Nicole. And a lot of what they knew about her was her response to this attack of being in favor of this wacky, as I think Joe used the word kooky, idea of rights of nature. And so instead of running from it, Nicole embraced it and basically said, hell yes, I am for this, and this is why. So it came down to the election night, and here's this first-time candidate. Nicole had never run for public office before, going up against this deeply entrenched incumbent. And not only did Nicole win, you know, I'll brag on her, Thomas. I'll brag on her because she's not here, but she won by a greater margin than the other 2 county commissioners who won in that race. So she won by the largest margin, even though she was a first-time candidate and was attacked. They spent a lot of money on attacking Nicole, sending out mailers, saying how kooky, as Joe would say, how kooky this idea of rights of nature was. And come to find out, people grasped it. They understood it. And they not only understood it, they voted for it in huge numbers in her race, and then later on in the general election in our race.
Great. Thanks, Chuck. So we have a couple questions that have been generated. First one is for Chuck. It's a question about the nitty-gritty about the interaction between the people's right to clean water, so human civil right, and the rights of nature material, which is about legally enforceable rights for ecosystems. The question specifically is, when did those 2 interact? Was it the Charter Review Commission that introduced the human right into the equation, or how did the sausage get made? in that.
Yeah, well, I was there for every meeting, so I saw the actual sausage making going on, and it was brutal. As I said before, being a man, I've never birthed a child before, but this was the closest thing to childbirth that I think I'll ever experience. There was a lot of heated moments in that process, and the attorneys back and forth. And this particular point that you mentioned, we had pushed for a purely rights of nature charter amendment. And the attorney said, well, we want something that has solid effect in current Florida law, not something that's just aspirational. We want something, as they said, we want a workhorse, not a show pony. So this was kind of the great compromise, was to put in this second clause about the right to clean water, this homeocentric clause. And, in the end, it proved to be really the winning touch. So, I'm very thankful that I lost that argument.
Great. So question for Joe. So the question deals with hurdles and obstacles to moving rights of nature laws. To some people, they sound very radical, kind of crazy, even not as crazy as 20 years ago, but kind of on that fringe for some people. So Joe, what have you found to be some of the hurdles and obstacles in terms of communicating what rights of nature is about to the general public?
That is a great question. It's an important question. Chuck just noted that pushing the right to clean water was at the forefront of the Orange County amendment, and that was absolutely prudent and the way to go. But the people who are really going to move this are very, very much passionate about the whole rights of nature angle here. And my experience has been that when you have activists out there communicating with the public, it is difficult for them to take that passion and to articulate it well to somebody else. They don't have an elevator speech ready to go. And I would urge anybody who's to get involved with this to take the time and to think it out and articulate a little elevator speech that you can deliver in 1 or 2 minutes. So here's an example. If someone asked me, what's this rights of nature thing all about? Well, number one is about giving legally recognized rights to ecosystems. Not the right to vote, not the right to bear arms, the rights that ecosystems need, the right to exist, the right to flourish, and the right to generate. Why do we need this? Well, corporations have rights. And if nature doesn't have rights, it cannot be adequately defended against corporations that do. That's just a legal reality. Also, it is about people's rights to clean water and healthy ecosystems. My experience has been that people think they have this right, that it's in the Clean Water Act or some other piece of legislation. It is not. And I think their jaws drop when they realize, what do you mean I don't have a right to clean water? As Chuck said, corporations have a right to pollute. We do not have a right to clean water. It is also about recognizing that our current regulatory system is failing us and failing nature, as this webinar has made clear. And it is also, to a degree, about democracy. It's about the constitutional right of local governments to declare and defend rights of nature laws if that's what their citizens deem they need. And then you take all these and you put it together. Most fundamentally, rights of nature is about changing our relationship to the natural world. Instead of being separate and superior to it, it compels us to be a community inside the natural community, and finally living sustainably. So that might have been a little bit more than 1 minute, but in a nutshell, that's what it all comes down to. And people have to be able to communicate that to people who want to know, what's this all about?
Great, thanks, Joe. So we have a couple of questions about preemption. So both of you can chime in. I'll give it to Chuck first, but the basic question is what next? In other words, the Orange County Initiative recognizes a human right to clean water, recognizes rights of nature. You have this state preemption law that was passed. I guess the sharp question is, how can that law be used now that the state has passed a preemption law? So Chuck, do you want to take that first, and then Joe can chime in?
Sure. One of the things about a preemption law is that the state itself does not act to try to stop the use of, for instance, our rights of nature charter amendment. It is raised as a defense if someone were to use the charter amendment, and let's say they're suing somebody who's polluting, let's say, the Wekiva River, and they're suing on behalf of the river. I mean, one of the important things that, when you get down into details of the charter amendment, is it gave individuals a right to sue on behalf of the water bodies. So in this case, if somebody brings a suit against the polluter would raise the preemption as a defense, and he'd say, well, this part of the amendment is preempted. And then it would be up to a judge to decide if it actually is preempted and to what extent. Because we do have this right to clean water also within the charter amendment, and it is severable. It is possible that a judge could rule one way and say, yes, that part of the amendment, the rights of nature part, is preempted by state law, but you have not preempted the right to clean water, that individual's right to have the waterways in Orange County protected against pollution.
Joe, do you want to chime in on that?
The only thing I would add, not necessarily getting into the technicalities of the law, is that the legal avenues we've been pursuing for the last 40, 50 years, they haven't worked. There is just super frustration amongst many, many people, and they are realizing that this is the new legal tool to use. This is the forefront of the new legal environmentalism. And we got to run with it.
Yes, and it should be noted that not just Florida has passed a preemption law. Basically, these preemption laws, I think, are kind of a badge of courage, because it shows that something is a threat, that the legislature is forced to act. And Ohio also has passed a preemption law dealing with the rights of nature. But I guess what I'm hearing the two of you say is, what's the option? Just to go home? I mean, to pretend that the state legislature preemption is valid. Chuck, I know that Speak Up Wekiva filed this lawsuit against the state of Florida challenging the preemption law itself frontally. Can you talk a little bit about what was in the lawsuit?
Yeah, it was a lawsuit that challenged the preemption on many different fronts. It challenged the underlying right or power, should I say, of the state legislature to preempt a local government from protecting the health, safety, and welfare of its citizens. There are other constitutional issues concerning vagueness. It says that no local government shall give a right to any person having to do with the natural environment. I mean, what the hell does that mean? The natural environment is everything. There's nothing that you can see or touch or feel that's not part of the natural environment. So, it's the legal language in that preemption is, in our opinion, unconstitutional. And I would like to add something, Thomas, about the before and the after. The before thinking when they passed this preemption, it was largely supported by the Florida Chamber of Commerce. But when we actually got into the campaign and people started understanding what it's about, Craig Pittman wrote an article, and he checked with one of the local chamber of chambers of commerce, and the majority of its members were in favor of the right to clean water. So, a lot of these knee-jerk reactions from industry, once they study it, or commerce, once they study it, clean water is good for Florida's economy. So much of our economy depends on tourism, as Joe pointed out. So for us to become the clean water state, to become known as that, would be a boom for business and boom for tourist industry, hospitality, restaurants, etc. So this is good for Florida. It's good for Florida's economy, and it's just getting that word out. It's going to take time.
I'd like to just chime in for 1 second, just to note that everything Chuck just said is accurate, and to think that 2 years ago, photos of our red tides and blue-green algae blooms went around the world, and to say that 2 years later, Florida is now leading the way in giving nature rights. I mean, to me, that is just a boon. People are going to eat that up.
So you guys have talked about some of this, but there's a cluster of questions about what's next. So there's this overwhelming vote in Orange County to pass recognition of the legal rights of the Okeechobee, Conlockhatchee, and other waterways within Orange County. What's the next step here? Generally, the next step would be enforcement of some kind, or actually using the charter amendment in some capacity. So can you guys, and I know there's been some talk about a state constitutional amendment, which is very exciting. And so how does this move from here? Chuck, do you want to take that first, and then Joe?
Yeah, I mean, we've given birth to this charter amendment in Orange County, and how it grows and where it goes from here is up to the citizens of Orange County. Now, I give 2 examples. When the rights of nature was placed into the Ecuadorian Constitution in 2008, it wasn't until 2010 that somebody brought an action. It was an action from a couple of expats living in Ecuador that brought an action in defense of a river there. And they were ultimately successful, relying upon the rights of nature provision in the Ecuadorian Constitution. And secondly, we look to the city of Pittsburgh, that was plagued with the threat of fracking wells opening up all throughout the city of Pittsburgh, and even under a Catholic cemetery. And they passed the rights of nature ordinance there. And without the single lawsuit, the fracking companies withdrew from Pittsburgh. And if you look at a map of Pennsylvania where the fracking wells and injection wells are, there's a hole in that map. And that hole in that map is Pittsburgh and the surrounding townships that also pass rights of nature ordinances. Thomas?
Yeah, Joe, do you want to say anything else about that?
Very quickly, for me, the focus is, again, taking the voices of the people in Orange County and amplifying it. Rights of nature has been a fringe idea. This is the opportunity to bring it mainstream, and through different media outlets, newspapers, films, social media, more initiatives in as many municipalities as possible. What was once considered to be fringe and outlandish is going to be mainstream, and that's how we're going to eventually get the constitutional amendment that we seek.
So hoping to fit in 2 other quick questions here. One is for Chuck. Chuck, can you cover again the elements of the Orange Right to Clean Water Initiative in terms of standing and remedy, just to let people know what it encompasses?
Sure. This is where it would be helpful to have Nicole, who's an attorney, but I'm going to take a shot as a non-attorney. What the charter amendment did is it created a clause that said any citizen of Orange County who had been a citizen for more than a year could bring an action directly against a pollution source, a corporation or a government that was polluting the waters of Orange County. And one thing that I failed to mention during the Charter Review Commission process, the scope extended out. One of the attorneys who was on the committee said, why are we just talking about the Wekiva River and the Econ-Lockhatchee River? What about all these other lakes and streams in Orange County? And so, yeah, sure, let's do that. We added that also to the amendment. So any single individual, it says in the amendment, has standing to bring an action. Now, what does that entail? It also entails, it gives a judge the right to fashion an equitable remedy where the judge would say, okay, Mr. Polluter, you've got to return a lake so-and-so back to the level that it was before you began to pollute it. And we have a water atlas here in Orange County, as I'm sure most other counties do in the state, that keeps track of what the pollution levels are. So if somebody dumps a certain amount of pollution in the lake, the judge can fashion a remedy, say, okay, you've got to get this pollution level back to the state it was before you started doing that. So as Joe said, this is a different type of mechanism. This is going after the pollution sources directly and not taking the responsibility to clean things up and placing it on the taxpayers of Florida. It's saying, no, that's not where the problem is. The problem is with corporations and governments polluting our waters, and that's where we should focus our attention.
And just as a last piece of that, can you reiterate the legal rights that were contained within the Orange County Right to Clean Water Initiative for waterways?
Sure, the 4 rights that are now, because it's been certified, they're in the Orange County Charter, that the waters of Orange County have the right to exist. They have the right to flow as defined in Florida statute. In other words, to maintain a healthy level of water. And that's very important for our underground waters as well. The right to be protected against pollution. Pollution also defined in Florida statute. And finally, the right to maintain a healthy ecosystem. So those are the 4 rights that every natural water body in Orange County, as we're on this webinar right now, have, as well as the right for individuals to bring suit on behalf of those water bodies.
Great. And Joe, one last question. We had a question from Polk County. Basically, question was, how can we in Polk County do something if the state legislature has passed this preemption law? So question to you on that.
Well, like I said, we have newly formulated language that does not run up against the preemption. If you want to use the word circumvent, it circumvents it, but it will not give us the legal hassles. People do not have to be afraid of that preemption.
And folks should contact the Florida Rights of Nature Network to get a copy of that template that you guys are willing to customize for them in various places. Is that right? Okay.
Yes.
So we're coming to the close of the hour. Big thank you to Chuck, Joe, and Nicole for everything she's done, even though she couldn't join us at length today, and the work of the Florida Rights of Nature Network. We so appreciate your presentations, your leadership on the rights of nature. You can reach the Florida Rights of Nature Network at their webpage, which we posted a minute ago, so fron.org, or on their Facebook page, which is a very active Facebook page with postings. I want to close by reminding everyone, if you're interested in learning more or seeing how you can move rights of nature campaigns forward in your own area, contact us at info@centerforenvironmentalrights.org. We've also posted that address as well. Also, we welcome everyone to check out the Bioneers Conference this year, where we'll be one of the keynoters for the conference, while also holding a panel and interactive session on the rights of nature on December 13th. Registration is still open, and you can find more information at bioneers.org, which we'll also post. So stay up to date on this and other events, news, updates, sign up for our newsletter, follow us on social media. And of course, we also welcome your support by donating on the website, which is centerforenvironmentalrights.org/donate. So again, I just wanted to thank our speakers. Thank you to Joe, thank you to Chuck, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We'll be making this webinar available via recording on our website and on YouTube as well. So thank you everybody for joining us today.